Okay, let's lay out a really practical plan that parents can take, that youth pastors can take to help disciple their kids. I divide discipleship of my kids up into 3 distinct stages. The first stage is to teach them the what. And so this is teaching them the biblical worldview, teaching them the Christian story, teaching them theology. And this begins as soon as they can speak. And at very young ages, this process begins. And so when my kid's 2 or 3 or 4, here are the kind of things that I'm going to do with them. Number 1, I'm going to read to them. I'm going to read books. I'm going to read children's Bibles. I'm going to read stories about Scripture, stories about Jesus. I'm going to teach them that theology through reading. But then secondly, I'm going to sing. I'm going to use song, use hymns to teach them theology, and in doing so, they'll memorize it. I'm going to help them memorize key pieces of Scripture, memorize maybe some of the ancient creeds of the church, memorize Psalm 23, memorize some of the Beatitudes, memorize the Lord's Prayer, so that they start getting this raw material of theology into them. And then I'm also going to catechize them. I'm going to use some of the great catechisms of the church, and there's children's versions of these things where they are asked a question and then they memorize the answer. And in doing so, they learn theology. So I'm going to read, sing, memorize, and catechize them at young ages to give them theology in the biblical worldview. Then when they get into 5th, 6th, 7th grade, that's when you transition. You keep teaching the what, but then you also have to teach the why. And one of the key ways to do this is by using questions. So you start questioning them. Okay, mom and dad have taught you that there's a loving God that exists. Why do you think he exists? And it's not enough to say mom and dad believe so. You need to do more than say, well, because the Bible tells me so. Are there any good reasons when we look into this world? Are there any good reasons from science or philosophy that tell us that, yeah, it's rational to believe that God exists? This is where apologetics is huge. And you start that by questioning your kids and then also letting them ask their questions. So when they have questions, don't take it as a direct challenge to your authority, but most times kids just want to know why they should believe something. They want reasons for themselves, and when they have reasons for themselves, then they take ownership of their belief. And so you use questions in that junior high stage, and then you teach them some good critical thinking skills. Teach them some logic. So you teach them not only what to think, but why to think it, how to think. And then lastly, you're going to then teach them how to do these things, how to articulate it. And this is where you got to get your kid out of the classroom and into real life. They have to see you engaging a neighbor in a spiritual conversation. Or they need to see you when the Mormon missionaries show up at your door, inviting them in and saying, hey, let's talk. And hold on, before we get into this conversation, I want my kids to be part of this, and bring the kids in the room. They need to see you out serving, right? This is where it's no longer just talking about it, now it's doing it. And doing it with your kids and giving them opportunities to articulate the what and the why. And this provides us a very practical plan on how we can disciple our kids in the biblical story so they can engage the culture for the cause of Christ.